All right, guys, welcome back to the weekly recap. This week we've got myself, who plays Animus. We've got Corey, who is Locknar, and we've got Jacob, our DM. We do not have Zach this week. He has some other things going on tonight, but it is all good because we can still have some solid conversation and ask each other some questions. Me and Corey maybe have questions for Jacob, but we finally got some other guest on this week, so that's also really cool. I did say at the beginning of this season, or this chapter, that we wouldn't really try to make anyone jump onto an episode unless we felt like it was an important episode or if they were able to make it. So that's why I asked Corey to be here tonight. Locknar was a very big part. We're finally in Vasselheim, and he's got some important stuff coming up. So, as always, the way we're going to do this, I'm going to go ahead and go through the recap of what happened in this episode. I may need Jacob's help a little bit because I'm a little fuzzy on a couple things, but then we'll get into some conversation about what we think about it. So, to start off in this episode, we are in Vasselheim. The episode before this one was a large shopping episode. As much as they are not very fun to go through, they happen here and there. Usually we try to spread them out, and most of our shopping is done by saying, hey Jacob, I want to buy this, this, and this, and Jacob's like, this is how much it costs, or we have a small rundown in some sort of shop. But last episode was actually very important for introducing a character, as much as Locknar is not someone who buys magical items, so it probably was not as fun on his side. But
he can, though. There's nothing. It's Corey who's stopping Locknar.
I don't think Locknar would be like
Locknar has his weapon.
Yep.
That's all he will ever want. I'm being true to my character to a fault. Like he does not want any magic potion. He doesn't want any fancy dancy amulet. He has his sword, and that's it.
To be fair, you could probably buy
and the amulet that he wears to up his constitution.
Okay. And he didn't buy that. He
found everything he has.
So essentially what Locknar is saying is, I will stand outside the store, and if you guys bought me something, I wouldn't say no.
Of course.
We should buy those jugs that Zygon has that never runs out of... Well, I mean, it would run out if Locknar drank it because it only has like 8 gallons a day, but you could get 8 gallons of wine or beer a day if you got one.
That's a fair point, but Locknar, he has money. It's just he doesn't care to use it. He doesn't care to buy anything. He doesn't see the point in buying anything. Honestly, you could go as far as saying, Locknar's a socialist. He doesn't believe in, the exchanging of goods for money. Really, he just wants his beer and he wants his sword, and as long as he's good among that, there's nothing changing his mind.
Love to hear it. So at the beginning of this episode, starting off with Locknar and Zygon, Corey actually wasn't here for about 10 minutes at the beginning of this episode, but basically all we did was meet the rest of us who were shopping, met up with Zygon and Locknar, who were in the bar, which is the Squealing Pig, or the tavern, and they had already been talking to a tiefling named Roxy and a human named Wick, and these two are from Westron. They had pretty much fled Westron at the same time that our characters left Westron a few months back in campaign time, and moved north.
Like a year ago in lifetime.
Yeah. We moved north towards, I don't know what city we ended up staying in. It was like a small one, but that was for Animus to get to the Eremite. And then we went down to Amon, and then we had a lot of time in Amon. So it's been a while since we've been to Westron, but we still definitely know Westron is one of the center points of government issue that we first saw before we really realized the issues whenever we hit Amon and started talking to multiple people, including Mathis, about it. But so basically, Wick, this human, was hired by Roxy's family to be a bodyguard, and the Margrave in Westron decided that Roxy's family was not needed anymore in their position, most likely a political stance or reason that he decided that. So Wick ended up getting Roxy out, but the family is still unknown on whether or not they are alive or not. So Locknar and Zygon pretty much came to a sort of agreement to kind of help them out in some way, maybe try to get back to Westruun.
We may also have been under the influence of alcohol at the time, so that might have.
I feel like you
helped.
don't even have to say that with Locknar.
Yeah, he's just mostly always.
I just like to clear the air. I just like to clear the air.
Like 90% of the time, Locknar's drunk.
I wonder what kind of decisions he'd make completely sober. It'd be like fucking like, maybe it'd be really bad, honestly. Okay, so basically,
I don't want to think about that.
We started making a small plan. There wasn't much we could do, but we're trying to make a plan to go back to Westruun and along with trying to help Roxy and her family, if they are still alive, we want to go into Westruun full force, and that be our main center for trying to kind of like hit or take down whatever political drama is going on within Tal Dorei. So we had some small conversations about that. Ultimately, not a huge plan can be made yet, so throughout the next couple weeks that we're in Vasselheim, that's going to be information that we're going to have to gather and try to put together to be able to somehow get into Westruun and take out or dethrone in some way the current Margrave. After we talked about that a little bit, we had a couple drinks. I don't know if we had any other major discussions before leaving or any of that, but we ended up leaving. Locknar wanted to get to the proving grounds where he had heard the champion, aka how am I slipping on his name right now? What's his name?
Farum.
There you
AKA
go. I was testing
Farum.
you, Corey.
Got it written like 10 times on my notes over here. Jesus.
AKA Farum is supposed to be in the night that we're currently coming up to. So on our way though, Zygon decided that he wanted to go back to this fortune teller because even though it was pretty obvious that Thea and Anzu's interactions with him didn't leave them the happiest, Locknar's seemed to be a little bit more, substantial, something that stayed with him to the point where Zygon was able to read that in a conversation we had. So Zygon asked Animus to come with him. We went over there. The main thing that happened for Animus myself was basically I got the information that I've heard a couple times before that Valshanar, I believe that's his name, is the warlock that is in Shadowfell, and Valshanar would be one of the founding fathers of the Kolbok Conservatory and one of the forefathers, literally number 4, that were part of that whole thing that Anzu's also part of. So Anzu, what's her name? The fairy princess, what's her name? Titania, Linares, and then Valshanar. So that's something I've heard multiple times now, and it's starting to become like very clear. That is kind of it's definite. He is the major warlock. And then Zygon got some information. I'm going to go ahead and read it. No one heard any of this because this is all memory for Zygon, but I did write it down not knowing that, so I do have it kind of crossed in my notes that I'm not supposed to know this. Zygon ended up fighting with Goliaths with a woman, which ended up being his wife. He was using cleric-based attacks. He was with his wife. It jumps to another part where he's with his wife and his child Lilith. Jumps to the next part, they're all in a mon together. And then it jumps to a next part in the ruins he's in the ruins of his cabin, where a demon figure had that Lilith almost made a deal with ended up taking the deal with Zygon, which ends up being Fraz. And the deal is to be a warlock of Fraz, and he has 3 things he needs to do. He needs to stop the would-be souls from being released. He needs to eliminate other warlocks of the Abyss. There's 6 major ones that he needs to eliminate, and needs to stop the convergence. Those are things we'll get into talking to Jacob about. After that, we head to the Proving Grounds, where Locknar has a major part of his story come up. He's finally at this place where he is going to be meeting with Farum for the first time since he lost to him in hand-to-hand combat. The reason him being here is to figure out if he can get better in this fighting style and be able to go forward being stronger and maybe be able to defeat some of the things coming from his past, as well as some of the things that we're going to be having to deal with in our future. Locknar, we can talk about it in a sec, but Locknar basically made his way up to these guards, and he made a little conversation with them that ended up leading him up into the box where Farum was going to be, and from there he chilled out, waited for Farum to come, and there's a couple fights that as well had started. We got down, I think Animus and Zygon and 2 other people were all, I think everyone wasn't even there yet. Locknar went by himself. Everyone else made it there, and we were there to watch Broder's fight, and Broder being this very jock-like, kind of like frat guy. He was fighting in a fight, someone that Thea kind of had some looks towards when we entered the city, so he ended up winning that fight. A couple of us bet money on him, but yeah, that's pretty much where we ended. That was, I think, that fight. Alright, and we're back. Jacob's back. Basically what I left off with was the end of the recap. We had ended the fights. Broder had a fight, and Locknar was now up in this booth where Farum was going to be meeting with him, and I don't know if he did or not at the end of that session. Did you end up seeing him?
They met, and then Farum basically told Locknar the only way that he could teach him anything is if they fought each other again.
Yes.
He didn't say that. He implied it. Yeah. And Locknar isn't good at picking up those.
Locknar's got good at, words and things. Locknar is a much better fist communicator.
Yes, he's better at that. Except he's quite terrified of the prospect of getting his ass handed to him again.
I mean, as anyone I think it's something that he needs to understand is going to happen, because to get better, you have to fail in certain areas to realize where you need to work on things, especially when you're trying to do hand-to-hand against a monk who's obviously very high level.
Understandable.
I'll jump into a couple quick questions with Jacob before we get into discussions about Locknar now and the current future of what is going to be coming for him. The first one, I'll jump back to the beginning of our episode. We had a discussion about political climate currently in Tal Dorei, and whether or not Western would be a good place to start, and I think we all kind of were trying to figure out even what we can do, because we're 6 people against an entire government in multiple cities. So what was your expectations from, did that conversation go the way that you planned it at all, where we may decide, let's overthrow government, instead of, hey, let's go try to figure out if we can save this person's family?
Oh yeah, I thought you guys would want to do that.
The government thing?
Oh yeah. Well, because I think Zygon will think it's fun. Locknar just goes around because he's wanting to either help people or fight something. Thea doesn't really care. Anzu doesn't really care. Braun does not like the clasp, and it appears that they are clasp affiliated, so he'll probably want to get rid of that. And then Animus, I think, just wants to kind of make the world better anyway. So yeah, I figured you guys would make the leap.
Yeah. I think it's a fair assumption. Something that we're definitely going to have to talk about. I think the one thing I did bring up was that we would have to possibly get Thea's father and the elves of Singorn to back us up, but I also don't know what political stance they're in right now, because they were guests of the Whitestone Party, which means that they maybe on Vesper's side, and Vesper and the Derolos.
Well, you have to remember also that her father is the ambassador to Whitestone, so
yeah. And
he kind of needed to be there.
The Derolos currently are in cahoots. Whatever we want to say, they are somehow aligned with Westron and the Margrave and what's going on there.
What I will say is that they're not. So the Derolos aren't necessarily aligned with them. It's more like
it's a political alignment. It's not like
an
actual
it's kind of like not to get too real world political, but it's like a big country and a little country, and the big country gives the little country weapons.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. That sounds about right. I think I'll jump. So the next two questions I would have would be moving over to the fortune teller. We talked a little bit about him in our last recap. Bringing him back up. We had my interaction with him. I think my only question from myself playing Animus would be, is this a pretty clear sign, now that this is the third time he's heard Valshanar as the warlock, that he should probably be like, yeah, Valshanar is now connected as the warlock that he grew up almost as a alt father figure? Okay. I'll take it as a yes. I'll take a yes there. It's fine.
I will let you draw your own conclusions.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's my conclusion as of right now, because I've heard it 3 times from you. And then I guess Zygon's stuff. Now that Zygon knows his entire plan that he needs to get through, there's 6 warlocks. What was the first thing? It was something about
so he needs to stop the activation of the world souls.
What's that? You mean like moving them in?
What's the world souls?
I'm trying to remember what you're talking about.
You guys have no idea.
Oh, that's a certain thing. That's not just something we know.
You don't know what world souls are. You don't know how they get activated. You don't know any of that.
Okay. Well, I will. Well then, I guess I don't know then. I guess my second thing would be, do we know any of these 6 warlocks yet? Have any of our characters come in contact with at least 1 or 2 of these 6 warlocks?
Oh, jeez. Honestly, I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe like 1. I think maybe 1, but...
Okay. Alright. Fair points.
Maybe. I'll have to think about it.
Alright.
Because I don't... As of right now, no.
So it's a definite no that Valshanar wouldn't be one. But he also isn't he's not one of the Abyss, so I should have answered that myself. He's one of the 9 Hells, so... Alright, well, let's get into some talk with Corey. Jacob, feel free to ask your questions as well, since Zach doesn't have like a planned out question conversation for us tonight. But Corey, we're finally here. This has been a couple month journey of getting over to Vasselheim. We had the whole shipwreck thing that happened and took about a month and a half out of that.
But you got to make a new giant friend.
You did. You made a giant friend.
Yes, but we lost him almost as quickly as we found him.
He was more just cool to have for those beachy episodes, and then pretty much made us near invincible in a moment where we literally almost died 3 episodes in a row. But you know,
fair point.
What are your thoughts here on, or what are your thoughts as Locknar finally getting to Farum, and kind of like what your thoughts are? What do you want to do here? What is your ultimate plan under the teachings of Farum? If he accepts you.
Locknar is not a planner. I don't know if you could tell. He doesn't plan things. He just sets his mind to a goal and then he goes after it, which can be respectable in a lot of ways, you know. But it's been very frustrating for him getting to this point, because, you know, we've had a lot of setbacks. You know, it took a long time for us to, you know, after the tournament to get going, and then once we got out of the tournament, it took a long time to get across the sea, and then we're finally here. Locknar needed immediately to find Farum, and in a way, he's satisfied that he got here and he found Farum so quickly. But like I said, Locknar doesn't really plan things out.
Yeah.
He didn't really think before, going up to Farum or plan anything out. So he's kind of just improvising it. He's kind of just winging it and seeing what's going to happen. And another fight, because we left on a cliffhanger, it left Locknar a little off guard because he obviously doesn't want to fight this guy who kicked his ass last time when he knows the same outcome is very likely to happen this time as well. If anything, Locknar wanted to meet him, ask him, hey, will you train me? And then in a perfect world, Farum would have said, yeah, of course. Let me show you some moves or whatever. But obviously that's not going to happen. Farum's a bit more complex than just being a teacher. And I'm sure in the coming episodes we're going to learn a lot about his backstory as well, where he came from and such, which could be a lot of fun, I think, because he's a unique character. I don't know of any other characters in this world that are like him.
Yeah, for sure. I think to finish off my thought on that, I mean, it took us in real time. It took us 6 months almost to get to this point.
Oof.
Of finally getting to Farum, but in game time, because or maybe not 6 months, maybe like 4 or 5 months, but we stopped around Christmas with the tournament. The tournament was about a month long, and then we had about a month long break during Christmas, and then we jumped back into it, and then had a couple months, and now we're finally here in Vasselheim. But in game time, I only think it's been a couple weeks or so.
It's been about a month and a half.
Yeah, about a month and a half total that you've been trying to get back to him, because we met him when we first got to Amon, and we weren't in Amon for too long. We bought a house there and then did a couple things, and then a lot of our stuff kind of happened like throughout a lot of time, but in game was not a lot of time. So
yeah, you were in Amon for about 3 weeks, and then you went to Onoa, and then you went back to Amon, and then you went to the island.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely one of those situations where it's like, you as a character have something you really want to do. I've had this happen a couple times where like you have some, and of course everyone has their own thing that like is their ultimate goal as a character. But like, that's either going to be far away, or it gets really frustrating when there's a setback, but at the same time, you just kind of have to enjoy the episode and not get too like frustrated, because at the end of the day, like,
unless it's shopping, and then
shopping I actually agree that shopping episodes definitely, they're frustrating sometimes, because
I love shopping episodes.
I know
of course you do, because you get to play so many different colorful characters.
Heck yeah.
Because like, even if it's me going in and I bought 3 rings, now we spend the next hour and a half with 4 other people who are shopping at the same place. And I mean, I think everyone feels that same way, but like, life goes on.
I almost feel like D&D could make like quick encounter shopping, where it's like, here's a list of stuff, here's all the math. Like, I wish there was just a giant table of every single thing.
I might
just
have
have
that.
price on it.
Could I get a number 4 with extra dip, please?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Corey.
Some fried
What's
rice
up?
instead of white rice.
So what if Locknar doesn't get what he wants? What if Farum's like, I don't want to teach you, or something?
Then Locknar is going to have to figure something out. He has not thought that far ahead. He is basically putting all of his eggs into this one basket, especially with what's back across the sea, the stuff that's going across the sea with the horde of Goliath that want to kill him, of course. He has to find some teacher who is going to make him a much stronger, much more well-rounded fighter than he currently is. Because as it is, Locknar is extremely one-dimensional. He has basically 2 attacks: charge and
man.
attack, and they're good attacks. He is very strong, but if he's going up against a stronger Goliath barbarian, he doesn't stand a chance.
So even if the whole goal of Locknar right now is to find Ferrum, who's a guy who beat him almost just without even struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Try to get stronger because he knows this guy is able to make him stronger. But if Ferrum denies you or Locknar the ability to teach under him, there has to be someone else who either he knows or, especially in the city of Vasselheim, you can find someone who can train you to be stronger. And that's his kind of like goal, is like find someone that's so much stronger than you, try to figure out, I need to learn this teaching style so that I can now become stronger and not become just a giant with a ton of muscle and a giant sword.
Yeah,
basically.
I kind of, yeah, basically.
There's more depth than that, of course, but
yeah. But you got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Locknar, he's really fun to play. I love playing with him, but but the story that I've constructed for him, he needs to become a more well-rounded guy.
He's like the like second protagonist in an anime, not like the main character, but like the sidekick character.
That's always big. That's always super strong.
Like you're like your Bakugos in My Hero, or like your Zoros in One Piece. Like they're the strong person, but every once in a while the hero gets ahead of them and they're like, wait, I have to train. And I like that about Locknar's character.
I think it's one of those things, like we talked about this a lot in chapter 1. Like a lot of us were still kind of getting our bearings through the first year of playing D&D, and building these like stories and like actually running stories through gameplay and being able to be like, oh, like this is happening and this is how my other players are responding and this is how Jacob is now putting it to me. And I think that was a lot of like we talked about like with multiple characters from our group who were like still trying to figure out a couple things through the chapter 1, and now we're coming into chapter 2, and I think every single one of us has a character and the ability to kind of like go even farther out and almost build an even bigger storyline that makes their character not just like even if like say like me, I had like a whole story planned out, but that's because I've played D&D before. I have a background with D&D. I knew what to expect. And
you made a little emo boy.
I did. And then we've got like
who likes his IPAs.
Yeah.
He loves his IPAs.
Love my IPAs. And then we have like Michael, who's played D&D before, but he jumped in like 4 months later than we started. And so he just didn't understand the group he was playing with at the time right away. And then we've got like Corey, Abby, Hunter, and fucking Brady. I was gonna call him Zygon.
Brady's name.
No, I was gonna call him Zygon. I always do that. I almost called you Locknar there too. But
see, that's a good sign for me as a DM. It means that you guys think of each other as your characters.
I think of I was gonna say I think of all of them as my friends, but
it also helps that we don't see each other in real life ever.
Yeah, we're in D&D talk right now.
I'm waiting for the moment where one of you actually dies.
Oh man,
because I want to see if you guys. I
don't want it to happen.
Because I think if Braun or like Zygon goes down, I think the party's gonna be sad, but I think they're gonna be like, yeah, that's sad. But I think if Locknar or Thea die, the party is going to be devastated.
I'm gonna be really sad.
I don't want to. No. Do not do this. Do not do this. Do not do this.
Do
not take my baby boy from me, you evil
when we
demon.
both fucking fell off that cliff fighting each other, and
he almost died.
I just wanted since Corey's here now, we can talk about that moment too. So
okay,
I knew that Locknar had unlocked a feature that allowed him to, if he hits 0 and doesn't instantly die, he can roll to be at 1. I knew he had that feature, but Corey didn't know.
I didn't know
he
that.
was
so
2 full levels behind on a lot of things, and 3 full levels behind on a couple things. Because...
Which is fine, because he's a new player and we're playing over internet.
It's also expensive to buy these fucking books, and also it's hard to...
They don't come through my bookshop ever. So...
Exactly. So, I was like, okay, I realized that Corey doesn't know this is a thing, so I'm going to do something where he finds out it's a thing. So that was the whole motivation for, like, you guys going off the side and everything. I was like, I'm going to introduce this, because I knew Animus, no matter how far he fell, was perfectly fine. Perfectly fine because of your shape.
Druid shape.
Because Druid shaping is stupid.
It
should work like other transformations, where if you take damage that goes over the health,
but then there's no reason to be a Druid if you get to higher level wizards or something that can polymorph a ton. Yeah, I think Druid's fine because, like, I don't turn into animals anymore, because once you get to higher levels, they can't fight anymore. And elementals, honestly, are just as strong. I lost to Corey. If I didn't go into the rock, if I chose a different elemental, if I wasn't going into the rock for defense, I would lose hand-to-hand with Locknar at level 8. So I don't think anything... I think the only thing that's overpowered about Druids is that they do have a lot of health, and once you get to higher levels, you can definitely go, like, flopping through a bunch of characters and just have infinite health, but you're never putting out a lot of damage as any of those characters. But, I mean, either way, Locknar, having 3 levels of power that he didn't know he had, easily would beat me in the next time we fought hand-to-hand. Especially if he's going to start...
Those 3 levels, they only get me up, like, 15 health points, and...
It was more than that. It was, like, 20 health
points. 30, yeah.
20 or 30, yeah.
Depending on how you roll.
Yeah, well, I didn't roll that great, but I'll be honest.
Another thing...
But regardless...
that I'm wondering about Locknar is the reason Locknar is doing this because he wants to fight his dad, or is it because if his dad shows up, he wants to be able to fight him? Is it like, I'm pursuing this, or I'm running away from this, and I'm preparing?
I mean, I don't want to give everything away yet, but, you know, at the back of my head, I kind of got an idea of how the conversation with Locknar's dad is going to go. But it's a little bit of both, but I think more he just would love to he would love to rid the world of his father, because he's just a shitty Goliath, you know, and the world would be better without him in it, because all he likes doing is raping and pillaging and murdering and eating babies, you know, and not in a funny ha chuckle kind of way that Locknar does. Like, Locknar's dad probably does eat babies.
Oh, there's some... I can't wait until Blitznar comes into the story. I cannot wait
Goliath. For Blitznar. Also, if anyone's watching this before you watch any of our later stuff, trigger warning on what certain characters may or may not do, because I don't want to be like sitting here and say
infanticide. That's punk as hell.
Sit here and say I didn't warn someone, but at the same time, we might have 10 people view this, but by the time that Blitznar comes into it, and they're all like, "Oh my god, what just happened?"
Well, what I will say is that there can be implied things. It doesn't necessarily have to be...
We're also playing D&D, and you're describing a character who is ultimately supposed to be put down as an evil character. I don't think it's too...
I don't think we need to get into baby murder for someone to realize someone's evil, though.
The new Hellboy did.
Well, yeah, and it didn't do well, did it?
That's true. That's very true. You got me there.
Yeah, but, like, oh, man, I already know what Blitznar sounds like. I already know what he looks like. I am stoked to have him show up.
Well, that probably won't be for a sec. We have stuff to figure out in Vasselheim. Corey, my last question to you for the night. Going off of Locknar's current path, How does Locknar feel about the involvement in other people's current goals in his group? If there's a specific one that he doesn't care about, then say that. Or is it like overall, like are you just kind of like with it because everyone's kind of shown they're with you?
A little bit of that. He has some people's goals he cares more about than others. I think he's shown that he's closer with Thea than some of the other people, so he's more invested in, say, Thea's story, rather than Braun's story. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
was gonna say that.
Yeah.
I think that Locknar's relationship with Thea is actually quite sweet.
I think.
I would say like it's so weird how like the group dynamic has developed, because initially when we were like playing together, like Corey and Hunter would like.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, it was crazy. But now that we've gone online, I don't know, Locknar. I think Locknar needs someone that like genuinely cares about him.
I don't even know if it went online would have been.
That's not to say that.
I think if
Anzu isn't my little buddy still. It's just his story hasn't really it wasn't Anzu wasn't really Anzu and Locknar. Their stories didn't really intertangle that much, you know. Whereas Thea and Locknar's, they do kind of, in a way, they have similarities. Locknar and Thea, whereas Anzu and Locknar are just good buddies, but their stories don't really have too many similarities, you know?
Another thing that I also like how Locknar, like, what I think is interesting is that Zygon has a relationship with every player or every character in a very different way. Like Locknar and him are drinking buddies. Him and Animus are like demon boys. Him and Anzu are both intellectuals. Thea and him like seem to hate each other.
It's a love hate.
Yeah,
they...
and Braun and Zygon seem like they have like this mutual respect. Like they both are the stoic loners, and they're just like game respecting game.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fascinating to me because like when we first started, like we all knew each other, but like we weren't super close. I would say like Corey and I were pretty close.
Yeah.
But like the group is, I've loved to see how the group's developed, and kind of like, I don't know, it's just fascinating to me. And like I think it's also interesting how we get to see other sides of people's personalities. Like Zygon is a scumbag.
Yeah.
And Brady is not. Brady's one of the sweetest
people.
We've said this so many times.
Yeah.
He loves having fun with Zygon. You can tell.
Yeah, you can tell. Like I love when Zygon does something and then you see Brady smirk, and it's just like, yeah. Or like I love that Corey, the way you play Locknar is so like innocent in a weird way. Like I love how like Locknar's worldview is so like simple, but it's like elegant in its simplicity. I don't know, it's just weird. Like I really like it. And like Animus is very like studious, and I don't know, it's so interesting as a DM to see players' personalities come out.
Man.
And
we haven't even hit the climaxes yet. Nobody has had a major non-sexual joke climax in their story.
Yeah, I'm also interested, like the way that Anzu, like I honestly feel like Hunter, if Anzu died, I think Hunter would kind of be bummed, but I also feel like Anzu as a character is okay with death. That's one reason why I think he does that, like stick my hand in an orb of blackness.
He kind of wants to see what happens, you know?
Yeah, his curiosity
he's done everything.
Really gonna kill him.
Anzu as a character has done so much in his life, and now he's at a point where he's trying to give back a little bit because he, his whole storyline. We've laid this out multiple times before. He left the college, drug problems, came back, all that kind of stuff.
Drug problems.
Yeah, drugs. It was not drug, it was a spice, but you know. But yeah, overall, I mean,
crazy.
it's like we are all finally getting to a point where, like, not even finally, I mean, we've been at this point since the end of chapter 1 and into chapter 2. We've got characters developed, we've got continuous development, we've got continuous story development, we've got different things happening. I mean, Thea and Zygon finally hit a point where they were fine with each other, they were good at being, like, allied on the same team, and then all of a sudden the whole sandcastle thing happens. Thea almost dies in the temple, and bam, they're like, there's a lot of shit going on in Thea's head that Zygon doesn't really understand. And so,
yeah,
like,
it's also interesting because, like, Zygon was what Thea is.
yeah.
And I kind of like playing with that parallel too. Like, I almost wonder if Thea sees Zygon as like a cautionary tale. And like, I think that's kind of interesting, and I think that might be a little bit of the animosity, because Thea thinks that Zygon, like, gave up on being a cleric because she doesn't know the actual circumstances.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested, like, I want to see if Abby and Brady will have a scene where they talk about faith. I think that would be super
or just
interesting.
overall start getting into it with each other on those kind of conversations.
Yeah,
like,
I kind of want them to have like a knockout drag down fight where, like, all that they just yell at each other and are just like, say everything to each other.
I don't know if we're ready for that kind of thing on camera.
The fracturing of the group.
The
Civil War.
We are not ready for something like Monopoly, okay? Playing Monopoly destroys friendships, and that is not what we want in this.
I also
D&D
just
campaign.
like how everyone's role playing is just getting better. Like, I can clearly, when we first started, one concern that I had with all the players was I need you guys to be able to distinguish from when you're talking in character and not. Which some of you did a voice, some of you did mannerisms, but now it is much easier. Like, I think you guys have all found your character voice, whether that be an actual voice or like your personality, and I can clearly tell when you guys are in character and when you're not.
Yeah, it's we talked about this a couple weeks ago too. Like, obviously myself, Corey, and Hunter all pulled out a voice pretty quickly, as well as Canel whenever she was playing with us back in the day. We all had a voice, and then Abby and Brady and Michael all kind of use their normal voices for the most part, but at the same time, it's like Jacob said, like, there's a point where you can distinctify between, like, wow, like, I know Thea's talking, or I know
distinguish,
distinctify, distinguish. I know dictionary words, guys.
The Kyle grammar night Nazi.
Yep.
Distinctify is not a word.
I know. I said distinct.
You're not a word.
I was gonna say distinctly, and I said distinctify. Yes. But yeah, get into that kind of conversation. Like, be able to, like, figure out when someone's talking, in game compared to, like, talking to Jacob or just, like, as a side thing. So yeah, definitely cool to see. But
I don't know. I'm interested to see, because, like, this is kind of inside the DM mind here. When we were first starting, I did not know what to do with Locknar. Like, he was my big nut to crack, because I was like, I don't know what to do here. But now I kind of have a layout, and Locknar is probably one of my I'm most interested in his story right now.
I am too. I'm pretty interested in his story too.
He's got
I hope so.
A lot to show. He's got a lot that finally is, like, hitting him.
Yeah, and, like, also when we first started, Locknar was kind of the comedic relief, sort of idiot of the group.
Yeah.
And I think, like, he's still the idiot in comic relief, but there's also, like, it's like an onion, man. He's got layers.
Yeah. I think it's worked in Locknar's favor because it took so long to get to this point. Everybody was wondering what's Locknar's backstory, maybe, and now we're getting into it, and it makes sense a little bit. You know, he doesn't want to share a whole lot.
Yeah, because it's hard to get into, especially, like, when you're first starting, and then even just over time. Like, when you're playing D&D, if you've played for a while, those of you who may have played for a while, and you jump into a campaign that you're playing with friends, or a campaign that's more based on role play and not just going to, like, an adventure night where you're playing just to play a couple hours and
be a murder hobo.
Yeah, be a murder hobo. then like you usually get that like background out of like the basic background. Like you get through that within the first couple months. Like you understand each other's characters. But even some of us didn't even know the full story of our characters, whether it's through memory loss or just not having the story ready. And so like we've kind of over time had to figure out like how to get our background both into the minds of the other players as well as out into our streams and our videos. So I think that's something that's been really cool to see, instead of just like a normal D&D group that's usually like, oh, this is my background, this and this is my main goal. It's like over the past year and a half we've been like not even gotten into everyone's backstory. I mean, we don't know. I bet the most we know about one character maybe 30% of their backstory, and because like realistically we're not to a point where we're hit all of people, and it might be mine, honestly. People might know my backstory the most just because I needed to gain people's trust so quick, since I've played my characters so like emo and angsty. So did Jacob freeze?
Did he?
I don't know. Well, I think that's a good place to start. If he did freeze, I think he did. So
yeah. Oh
well. Well, thank you guys for watching tonight. We'll be back this Sunday to play another round, and we'll probably have Corey on in the next couple weeks if he can, because there it is.
He's gone.
Here, I'll just put my face into view right here. But yeah. Oh, there he is.
Huh?
Oh my God. Huh? Hunter, we're in the middle of a stream.
Dear Lord.
We're in the middle of a stream. What's happening?
Hi guys, I'm back.
Hunter jumped on.
Oh, hi Hunter.
We're in the middle of a fucking stream.
But now he's gone. But now he's okay.
Hunter jumped out for a second. Okay, cool.
He's gone. Everything's going off the rails.
All right, we're just gonna end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We play on Sundays around 6:15 is when we try to start. 6:30 is usually when we actually get the stuff started, as well as every Wednesday night we try to do a recap like this. If you guys haven't seen our recaps before, you can go back and watch all of our recaps. They explain the story that's going on, as well as that me and Jacob are still trying to figure out a way to get through the Chapter 1 recap. I was actually going to bring that up to him this week, so we'll hopefully have that out to you guys soon. But
wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Corey.
Yo.
Is a hot dog
Nope.
a sandwich?
All right,
or taco?
thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time.